I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. Dancing Rabbit is really walking the walk when it comes to low carbon living. I find it just amazing that they can live with so few cars and produce so much of their own energy. You'll hear about it from Rae tonight. Rae grew up in Southern California, and she traveled looking for a community and found it at Dancing Rabbit, and she's been there for a year, and she's loved it. So please welcome Rae Machado.
So I'm Rae from Dancing Rabbit, and thank you for coming to this evening's Green Speakers series. And I feel so blessed to be living by example and living healthy, happy lives with people around me at Dancing Rabbit. So first of all, that is one of the biggest blessings of living in community. So I'm going to start with a slideshow for about an hour and then allow time for questions and answers at the end, but feel free to jump in if you have something that's pertinent or burning. And we'll try to end by 8 o'clock tonight, but I would love for the Q&A to go much longer than that. I'm here for you. So I visited Dancing Rabbit on 10/11/12, and I moved there on 12/12/12. So that's enough serendipitous for me to feel like I was in the right place at the right time. And one of the best friends I made when I first moved to Dancing Rabbit had done a bike tour of 150 different communities, and she chose to live there at Dancing Rabbit. And I could say that for 3 more people that live there. Like, they really looked into communities and they chose to live there, and so that was a huge encouragement for me to trust that initial instinct that even though it was only the second community I had researched, I felt certain and confident that that was home. So I met my partner, Illy, there, whom I've learned many things with, from how to build a natural building with round wood timbers, straw bales, and earthen plaster, and scaffolding. Couldn't have done it without that. And we've learned about governance and in community, which puts the decision-making power back into each individual. We've learned a lot about nurturing relationships and trusting that everyone there is coming from a place of compassion and having the best interest of the community in mind. So it helps to go into meetings with that mentality of just trusting that that person's opinion really is in everyone's best interest. And it helps us to make decisions by consensus and feel like that person's opinion is valid and we can trust them and each other. So I'm not going to explain climate change or habitat destruction or other ecological issues that the world is struggling with, but I'm going to talk about what we're doing to address these issues. Dancing Rabbit is demonstrating through cooperation and conservation that we can reduce our consumption and cut our ecological impact by what we estimate to be 80 to 90%. And that's not just a plan for a future. We're doing it right now, and we think you can do it too. So Dancing Rabbit Ecovillage is a sustainability demonstration project dedicated to showing people that we can live healthy, happy lives without destroying the world around us. I love these people. And these people. Our goal is to create change in the world by inspiring others to live sustainably and by providing information about the skills and the technology to really do it. Dancing Rabbit is comprised of about 60 people and 15 kids. We're located in northeast Missouri, up here at A. So there's Quincy, St. Louis. And it was about a 3-hour drive from here. So we have 280 acres, and most of it is set aside for conservation or agriculture. Our village is clustered to minimize the impact and will only ever take up at most 40 acres. So the first one I just showed you is where our village is now, with 60 people living maybe amongst 30 dwellings or so, and that's the future. Say we get up to 300 to 500 people, this is what our community could look like. Still only ever encompassing 40 acres out of the 280. So we've planted 20 acres of prairie grasses and over 12,000 trees to help restore our land closer to its pre-settlement conditions. So our land is owned by the nonprofit and land trust, and each family or individual leases the land and owns the home and the improvements that they make onto the land. So we just pay our lease fees, which are approximately a penny per square foot. So that would range between $35 to $40 a month. And my house in particular, with the materials being timber, straw bale, earth and plaster, has so far cost about $17,000. And I have no mortgage, and I have a roof over my head, and it's built to last the lifespan of a human instead of a 200 or 300-year-old structure that will remain once I'm no longer here. Let's see. So everyone is responsible for their own housing, income, and expenses, providing for a high degree of independence. We have a short set of agreements for sustainable living that we call covenants, and we all agree. So we all agree to those covenants, and those help to guide our ecological choices. So I have a question for you all. May I see a raise of hands as to who has ever heard of an eco-village before today? And how about and how about a food co-op? Wow. Oh, I'm so impressed. You don't need me. Okay. So there's hundreds of eco-villages worldwide, and there's 1,600 intentional communities just in North America. The definition of an eco-village is a place where people have gathered to live more sustainably. You can find eco-villages and intentional communities on the IC.org directory, IC for intentional communities. And that term is inclusive for all eco-villages, co-housing communities, residential land trusts, communes, housing cooperatives, and other projects where people strive together with a common vision. Community and cooperation are the secret ingredient in sustainability. Sharing is one of the main ways we cut our impact. This is an image, no it's not. So these are a few eco-villages throughout the world. One was Tamara in Portugal, one was Abundance Ecovillage in North Carolina, and there's LA Ecovillage. This is LA Ecovillage where they're having a party in the streets. So that's encouragement for you to create community and connection with your neighbors by reclaiming the streets, by having a garden in your front yard or a potluck on your block, out in public where everyone can see. So let's move on to natural building at Dancing Rabbit. Missouri has very few building code regulations, so Dancing Rabbit is best known for being a place to experiment with natural building. One of our sustainability guidelines is that no lumber harvested outside of the bioregion, except reused and reclaimed lumber, shall be used for construction at Dancing Rabbit. This house is called Gob Cobotron. It's right next door to mine. For some reason, we name our homes. I think it's because maybe a builder builds this home and you don't want to call it John's house because John just built it. So if people move in and out, you know, it can keep the same name. And say the female counterpart of the household owns the house, but then people call it the male counterpart's home, and that doesn't really feel very good. So to avoid any of that genderism, we name our homes.
What's your house called?
You know, it's not quite finished yet, so we're gonna have a naming party for it where people will come over and offer up some suggestions. This is the inside of the house that you just saw, got Cabatron.
What is that made out of? Material?
This building is not straw bale, it is just a cob. So that's gonna be a mixture of earth and plaster and straw. And you sort of get the straw wet with a very liquidy clay slip. And that clay slip helps the straw to take shape and form. And so you sort of like form this straw into the shapes that you want it and then apply an earthen plaster over that. And the idea is to try and get air to be sequestered inside of the walls, and that acts as your insulation. So in 15 years, Dancing Rabbit has built over 25 homes, most of them with natural materials such as clay, sand, and straw. We have a dozen straw bale buildings ranging from 100 square feet to 2,800 square feet. So the average person lives in a very small space at Dancing Rabbit. Our homes are built to minimize their impact during construction and during use. So the difference between natural building versus green building or conventional building. Natural building is going to be straw bales or cob walls and earthen plasters. Green building is going to be similar to conventional building, but with reclaimed materials or eco-friendly products that are paints with a low VOC or VOC toxicity. This is an earthen floor inside of Sky House. You'll hear me say Sky House quite a few times. I'm going to try and help you to see how we encompass in one building so many different needs.
What were the red?
The red pipes in the floor, those are called PEX tubing. And so we would basically like have a wood-burning boiler to heat our domestic water and then run that hot water through the pipes in the floor to heat our building. So that's our source of heat. This is the inside finished product of the same one, the earthen floor that you just saw. This is Sky House, where I am a part of this is the dining room and the food kit, oops, wrong button. So this is the dining room, the kitchen would be over here. And the upstairs of this building, we have one resident in the back, and it has 6 rooms, and each room has a loft. So this could accommodate 12 people for living, and then the kitchen could accommodate between 7 to 30 people in this food scene. So with human-powered teamwork, great things are possible. We have a tool co-op called Conscious Construction Tool Co-op where we all share tools, but we pay to be a member of it. So our houses are 1/3 of the size per person of the average American home. And this is similar to homes back in 1950. So we do this by sharing spaces, like our common house, or shared kitchens. My friend Catherine is able to have a bus for a home with a greenhouse on the side there. And there's wool in the windows along this side and here, and a burned piece of earth on this side so that when the winds and the storms come from the north, there's an earth berm on that side of the building and thick wool insulation, and then a greenhouse on the south side to absorb the passive solar heat. And so we can have tiny little homes, like this is where Thomas lives, and it's just a bedroom. But then we have a common house where we can share infrastructure, whether it be the restroom facilities and showers, the office space, computer room, kids' playroom, living room, and kitchen. This building was, in 2005, originally 570 square feet, and one person lived in it. And then in 2011, a family of 5 moved in and it expanded to be 1,800 square feet. So we try to keep a practice of reusing or expanding what we have instead of maybe breaking down and starting new. So this is the common house building here that all 60 of us people share. And this is the outside of Sky House, the building that I'm going to mention lots of times. This is the casa. It is a structure that is a dance hall. We use it for yoga in the mornings, concerts, birthday parties, and it's just another space where we get to build our homes small and share infrastructure this way. And there's a wood-burning stove in there. So we get all of our electricity from renewable sources like solar and wind. We have 4 wind turbines on farm. And we do this first by reducing our electricity use to less than 10% of the average American. Our wind turbines are a little bit noisy, but it's interesting having a windstorm and waking up in the middle of the night thinking like a pterodactyl just flew by my house. So for 15 years, we were off the grid, and homes had a standalone battery-based energy system, totaling about 15 kilowatts of solar. In 2007, we installed 25 kilowatts of panels and set up a village microgrid, which we connected to the main utility grid, and we started exporting energy. We're committed to exporting twice as much energy as we consume to offset the full impact of our use of the grid. Here's one of our wind turbines. Another sustainability guideline is that Dancing Rabbit members will not use personal motorized vehicles or store them on Dancing Rabbit property. So instead, conservation is always the first step. We find alternative technologies to meet our needs. We drive less than 10% of the miles of the average American. And since we do not allow personal vehicles, we instead have 3 cars and a truck and a tractor for all 75 or 65 people. We're committed to ride sharing, and we rarely get in a car alone. Every week on Sundays, we have a week in preview meeting, and we get to talk about announcements that we want to share with each other, invite each other to events. And then we have it's called DRVC, is a car co-op, Dancing Rabbit Vehicle Co-op. And we, at that meeting, discuss who's taking what car when. We sign out and say we need this one for this or whatnot, and we let people know where we're going so that we can share the ride. If somebody else needs something picked up from Memphis, it's one of our closest towns, we'll just pick things up for each other. So our village is designed for people, not cars. We do allow for emergency vehicle access or for delivery trucks to come through, but day to day, everything is close enough to walk or bike. So after we reduce our driving, we run our vehicles on biofuels and have purchased an electric vehicle, a Nissan Leaf. This is an image of a path, just some more footpaths to show you that we walk places. This is the old pond. It's filled with bass and carp and ducks, and big white egrets come by. We use a lot of pull carts to haul our stuff from one side of the village to another. And people almost all work from home. We have a nurse in town that works in town, and some people might leave for a chunk of time during the winter for work. You know, I don't think I was supposed to say that right now. Let's talk about water. So we get most of our water by collecting it from our roofs, storing it in cisterns, and filtering it for household use. We use only 12 gallons of water per day per person on average, compared to the 135 gallons per person per day for the average American. All of our wastewater is treated on site through a natural process, either a wetland or a lagoon. So this is the backside of Sky House, and all of the wastewater from this building and from the common house just on the other side of it go in through a pipe over here into this cattail pond, which you can see this black piece right here is called an EPDM liner, and that is a very, very thick plastic that's going to keep any water from leaking out. And so we have this crater in the ground and the liner on top of that, and then pebbles and rocks of different sizes and a little soil for these cattails to grow up in. And the cattail is a plant that does bioremediation. So it's going to clean and filter the wastewater. And then it goes through another tube that leads to the bigger pond that is not a pond we swim in. It's just another part of the wetland construction. And that pond is very alive with animals and frogs. You'll hear them all hours of the day. Okay, so this is a graph of, let's see, so the blue dots are your direct use of water for the activity, and the green dots are the virtual, or I call the indirect use of water. So let's say rise and shine, breakfast, lunch, dinner, cleanup, and energy is down here. So if you have a regular toilet versus a low flow toilet, you're going to use about 6 gallons per flush versus 1.5 gallons. And you can see the amounts with like the shower and the sink and the low flow. Your breakfast, if you have a cup of coffee, it requires 37 gallons of water indirectly just to make the beans. And tea is going to be 9 gallons of water to grow the tea and get it to you. The cooking of eggs versus cereal, and apple versus oranges. And this is how much indirect water it's going to require to get that piece of fruit to your plate. So lunchtime comes around and you have 33 gallons of water used indirectly to make a bottle of soda. 634 gallons of water are required to make one piece of hamburger. That gets me sad. I'm going to skip that part and let's go to cleaning up. And so you see your washing machines versus an eco-friendly washing machine is going to be 22 gallons of water instead of 40. Your toilet, a low flow, 1.5. Oh, we saw that there. So then energy. If you receive power to your house from a nuclear power plant, that's going to be a whopping, I can't read what it is, I think it's 844 gallons of water per household, per day. To power your house, it takes that much water. And if you have, even if you have solar panels, you're still incurring an indirect use of water of 24.5 gallons per household. And that, I think, is to make the product of the solar panel.
What's the really big thing in the middle?
Beef,
Oh,
a pot roast,
wow.
and there's a chicken. Any questions here? May I continue? So heating. Our next sustainability guideline is at Dancing Rabbit, fossil fuels will not be applied to the following uses: powering vehicles, space heating and cooling, refrigeration, and heating of domestic hot water. So instead, we heat with waste wood, and that has a gasification chamber at the bottom here to reclaim combustible gases that come off of the wood burning process. So it's making it super efficient. Excuse me. Well, if I could use Chinese refreshment, maybe y'all could too. I brought sun-dried tomatoes. We made them ourselves in our kitchen. Don't be mad at me if you don't like them, or if you get sick somehow. We'll not get sick. But I'm willing to share some food with you. I hope that's okay.
Does Bobolink know that you brought those out of the kitchen?
They do.
So this is burning waste wood, you said?
Mm-hmm.
So where are you getting waste wood?
The first option would be fallen trees from our land or from nearby. Another option would be, we luckily have a company called Oakwood Industries, and it is 13 miles away. They make oak furniture, and they have a lot of waste wood that they're just going to turn into trash. So we pick up their trash and we scavenge for the good parts that we want to make things out of. And sometimes there's like a whole base of a chair. I'm like, I'm not going to burn that. It's half a chair already. And other times it's chunks and tiny pieces. And so my partner goes away to work in California often, and we went to Oakwood Industries and got a huge shipment of this wood trash and brought it to the house, and it was super cold outside, and it was like late in the day, and we were trying to unload the back of the truck and get all this wood into the right place because it was going to rain soon and stuff, and we started getting a little bit annoyed with each other. And the next day I woke up to those little chunks of wood that he had written a ton of messages on and left them in beautiful places for me. It was amazing. So we design our homes using passive solar heating. In the summertime, the sun is way up high, and it's going to shoot straight down and kind of miss your windows. And you want that to happen. Versus in the wintertime, the sun is lower in the sky. So you have the chance of letting the sun penetrate through your windows and heat the mass inside of the house to help retain the heat. Almost every house is going to have a greenhouse on the side here for a continued passive solar heat gain. And we also use a mudroom or an airlock or a foyer. And so basically, like, entering in through one door and closing it and leaving your muddy shoes there, and then as you enter into the next door, that gusty wind from outside isn't going to penetrate and lose your heat or your cool. So cooking. This is a solar oven. The walls of it here on the inside are lined with foil, and so that foil directs the rays of the sun into the middle. There's a glass plate there. And the inside of the box here is all painted black. So we put our food inside, and let's say it's early spring, and it's pretty chilly outside, but it's very sunny. The temperature in this sun oven is going to be 150 degrees. So you might have to leave something in there for like 3 hours for it to get hot. Versus the middle of summer. In the morning time, when you use it early in the day, it's already going to be 250 degrees early in the day, and then when you use it for dinner time, it'll be much hotter than that. So it's faster cooking later in the season.
And how many people at Dancing Rabbit cook with these?
That is a great question. Almost every kitchen has their own solar oven. And this one is commie, so anybody's allowed to use it. So that's the tricky part, is like if somebody is constantly putting their food in or out of there, it loses so much heat. By the way, don't open your oven when you're cooking. Like, use the little light to look at your food, because you lose 20% of the heat that's in there every time you open the oven. So we use 90% less propane or natural gas than the average American. We hold trainings with visitors and new residents to assure proper conservation and just sort of get them comfortable with the ways in which we cook. let's see. Another sustainability guideline. All gardening, landscaping, horticulture, silviculture, and agriculture conducted at Dancing Rabbit must conform to the standards as set by OCIA for organic procedures and processing. In addition, no petrochemical biocides may be used or stored on Dancing Rabbit's property for household or other purposes. So we grow lots of our own food, mostly vegetables. Some people have animals, and some people grind their own flour and make their own bread and make their own cheese and butter and jam. There's a lot of diversity in the eating scenes. We get a lot of our food locally from within the county. On Sundays, we have a farmer's market right after our weekend preview meeting where we bicker about who gets what car when. And that Sunday farmer's market, people bring their produce, and that could be people at Dancing Rabbit that grew it, or Dancing Rabbit has 2 other neighboring communities. We call ourselves the tri-communities. And then early on in Dancing Rabbit's existence, some people moved to a town nearby called Memphis, and so there's a couple of food growers in Memphis who also bring their food to us. We met somebody at a dog and gun flea market that is an organic produce grower, and she comes from Canton, which is about 30 miles away, and sells us produce only in the peak of the season. And then she accepts elms. And, oh wait, I haven't gotten to that part yet. I'll tell you later. Okay, so we also wild harvest a lot of food, whether it's peppergrass, curly dock, cleaver, chickweed, raspberries and blackberries grow wild in our neighborhood. So we all range from vegan to omnivore, and she's planting a tree there. Many food co-ops have their own set of shiitake mushroom logs, and we basically order a bag full of spore, and then we drill holes in the mushroom logs, insert spore, and cap it with wax, and let it sit in a moist environment for 9 months before it finally starts fruiting. But isn't it gorgeous once it fruits?
It's like bagels. It's like bagels.
Carb-free bagels. So we do preserve a lot of our own food for the winter. This is, again, Sky House. That's the kitchen and the dining room scene, and just a work party where everybody's coming together and saying, hey, today we're making sauerkraut. Let's cut the cabbage. Another sustainability guideline is around waste disposal systems at Dancing Rabbit shall reclaim organic and recyclable materials. So these are some of our processed foods, from tomato products to pickles and dilly beans, dehydrated kale and applesauce, and 4 flavors of jam, and sun-dried tomatoes. See those? I brought you that jar right there. So our first retail business that's open to the public, and we do hope for more, but this one is called the Milkweed Mercantile. It's a cafe and a bar and a certified commercial kitchen that can be rented out for things like bread baking or your own soap business or whatnot. And this is the upstairs of the Milkweed Mercantile. It's an eco-inn, a bed and breakfast. They have 5 rooms. They can sleep comfortably 12 people. And they're open for business, starting now. So the cafe has recently acquired kegs to help reduce the glass bottles that we encounter. And our recycling has recently obtained a glass crusher. So these 2 aspects help us to use kegs and not bring in as many glass bottles. And then the glass crusher allows us to take the glass bottles that we do bring in, and instead of driving them to a recycling plant, we're the hub of natural building. And one thing that we use in natural building is sand and aggregate. So aggregate's just going to be like sand, but a different size and shape. And so the glass crusher creates something very similar to aggregate that we would normally use in earthen plaster. So I made my walls out of crushed glass bottles from the mercantile. So this is my friend that makes soaps and teas and salves and tinctures. And that's getting into income and how people make a living there. Again, the first step is conservation. We only spend between $3,000 and $15,000 per year per person. So in the past, I've been hired to do things like be a videographer for the Ecovillage education course that took place there. I've been hired to teach American Sign Language to a family that was having a child with disability. I've been hired to make curtains, thermal, thick, insulated curtains for many homes there. And I mean, even mending. I threw a mending party where I just invited people to bring me the stuff that they needed fixed between this hour and this hour. And it turned out to be very lucrative. I will definitely do it again. So let's see, people make an income from a variety of sources, whether it be the people that own the bed and breakfast and they offer jobs to other people. Some people have a midwifery business. Clint gives haircuts. Many people grow food and sell it. And many people at Dancing Rabbit are natural builders or carpenters. And some people do the other stuff like web design or working for nonprofits where they can telecommute. So let's see. And then there's the option for people to maybe live there seasonally. When you become a member, it requires that you spend at least half of the year on farm. So you're welcome to leave for the winter time and make some income and bring it back and live simply and have it last you a whole long time. That's me. So this is an example of a way to build your home at Dancing Rabbit. I did a workshop model. I hired a timber framer who was an expert to be a teacher of a 10-day workshop. We had 6 students ranging from age of 65 to 25. And in that 10 days, we all learned how to use hand tools like chisels and mallets and those things and planes and yeah. That was a good day. So this place is like a vortex of instant manifestation. Like living in community, you always have somebody walking by when you need a helping hand. It's like, I was just about to ask you to help me, like, and you walked by, and can you lift this heavy log with me real quick? So this picture is of a reciprocal roof where each timber is leaning on each other, and that just makes me feel like a connection to community. So around income is economy. Ideally, we try to work off of a gift economy where we just help each other out with no specific compensation. But when you need more clarity than that, we have the ELMS system. And this is basically a website where we can exchange local money. So within our community, we can pay for things, services and goods between each other. And a local currency is not legal tender that I'd be able to pay my taxes with, but it is currency. It is accepted within the community. I can earn elms by being a carpenter for you and then use those elms to pay my membership dues. So the US dollar is still needed for anything that we would want to buy from the outside. So we still need to be bringing in US dollars. I'm sure you'll have questions about this at the end. So healthcare. Some people have normal insurance and some people don't, just like the greater community. And I think that we just get a lot of physical exercise in. We get a lot of every day, like maybe you're hauling your own water, or carrying things and building, and it's Missouri. It's super hot. It's funny. Anyways, the healthcare is what we're talking about. We used to have a licensed chiropractor and massage therapist, but people do come and go from Dancing Rabbit depending on where their life leads them. Right now, we have a couple of Reiki masters that do energy healing work, and we have a licensed acupuncturist. I did acupuncture with her yesterday, just on my ears. I feel like they're a bit red from it still. And a couple of students of reflexology. So many people make their own medicine, and that's their form of healthcare. So for example, I make a lot of personal care products, from shampoo with fenugreek seeds in it to help with dandruff, or sunscreen is a really important one to me. Our skin is an organ that's going to absorb everything we put on it. So I make sunscreen with ingredients that are edible. I have had somebody eat my sunscreen before. But anyways, it has like zinc oxide, shea butter, and coconut oil, and vitamin E. So like zinc oxide has an SPF of 20. It comes in a cream from the pharmacy, and then shea butter or coconut oil have an SPF of 4, and they all build on each other. So if I double the recipe, I can increase the SPF of that product. So I make other things like deodorant and toothpaste and stuff. So again, people do use mainstream and alternative healthcare. Education. Kids are both homeschooled and attend public school. This is our preschool group, and Catherine teaches preschool every Wednesday, and she always has a helper that sort of changes seasonally. These are a few of the children that live in our community right now, and so the public school bus does come right up to our doorstep, and it picks up our kids and brings them back. Thank goodness. And because we have great kids. And then, so on farm, we have a couple of like homeschooling groups that either do it just with their parents, or they swap a couple days with this parent and a couple days with this parent, or just in a town nearby, a few miles away, there's a homeschooling group of a solid like 9 kids that are always there, and they're all of a similar age. But just like everything else at Dancing Rabbit changes seasonally, and depending on what people live there at what time, the level of schooling changes also. In the past, they've had a much more complete homeschooling system where they were teaching Latin, biology, and physics. So one of the best parts is getting to live our lives with other people who share our values, and our day-to-day work is in line with our own values. We have friends to support us, and kids have such an amazing life here. We can feel good about our lives and let go of despair and guilt. So we make decisions based on consensus. Well, we used to, and now we have transitioned to a village council, which is maybe like considering it a representative of, say, 7 people that help guide and plan the agenda of what our meetings and decisions are going to be about, and then they send it out by email, and we all get to review policies. And so there's a level of consensus decision making in here. So we do a lot of outreach and education. Dancing Rabbit has a nonprofit arm with the purpose of bringing our message and demonstration of sustainable living to the wider culture. So we give tours on farm, we bring visitors in. Right now we have 12 visitors that are staying for 2 weeks, and in that 2 weeks we'll give them a super intensive orientation of what life is really like there and of how we do things. Excuse me. We bring in work exchangers, people that are interested in learning the skills, and interns, people that want to help the nonprofit and be directly related to learning about the nonprofit. Let's see, we've had an Ecovillage education course. Oh wait, that picture was me hosting a few students from a film school in Florida. They were just there 2 weeks ago and stayed for 2 days, and I arranged interviews with them and different community members, and they got to go home and make a documentary on Dancing Rabbit. And then this is sort of another version of that. It's like the TV film crew coming to Dancing Rabbit and interviewing us and then taking footage home and making TV shows or whatever they want to make out of us. Any publicity is good publicity. So we don't expect everyone to live exactly like us. Our whole purpose is to inspire people to live sustainably and to provide a real-world example of people actually doing it. We provide people with the tools and the knowledge, but also the hope that you can do it yourselves in your life. So this is another timber frame workshop. I'm going to go through this part a little bit faster. It's about our new community building the nonprofit is wanting to build. The deepest of green building. The Green Community Center will increase Dancing Rabbit's effectiveness for positive change by offering nonprofit offices, a village commons, and a home for our education and outreach activities. It will be certified as LEED Platinum and meet the Living Building Challenge, serving as a replicable example of what sustainable construction can achieve on a community scale. The center will also house the national headquarters for the Fellowship of Intentional Communities, which has promoted cooperative living since 1987. The shared infrastructure will support our town's growth and offer the public a living laboratory in which to learn about a sustainable path. The building will be about 8,000 square feet, and it will be certified LEED Platinum. LEED is Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's a green building certification program that's transforming the way we think about how buildings and communities are designed, constructed, maintained, and operated across the globe. Living Building Challenge is the built environment's most rigorous performance standards. It calls for the creation of building projects at all scales that operate as cleanly, beautifully, and effectively as nature's architecture. To be certified under the challenge, projects must meet a series of ambitious performance requirements, including net zero energy, waste, and water, over a minimum of 12 months. Detroit, the place with the most production of cars. And look what's possible. Like, we can bicycle places. So these are showing what people can do in cities and suburbs, like biking. We can drive less. Vehicles are one of the top contributors to climate change. Try riding the bus or light rail, walking or biking distances of 5 miles or less. Set up a carpool when possible. And just drive efficiently and plan your errands geographically. City Share is one option of a car co-op. Another one is called Zip Car. So don't worry, the chickens are not going to get on the bus. But it's to sort of So let's see. Merge like urban and agriculture. So first we could start composting food waste. A third of our trash is compostable. We can eat low on the food chain. Half of our carbon footprint is from the production of meat. Maybe commit to eating meatless meals 1 or more days a week. We can buy locally, seasonally, and organic food. Commit to incorporating these choices into your meal planning and shopping whenever possible. Maybe even grow your own food. Start a vegetable garden, grow herbs or tomatoes, maybe in summer pots if you don't have space. And just choose less packaged or less processed goods when you're shopping. Maybe go to the bulk good aisle section first. So, caulking. I have heard that filling up all the gaps in the windows and doors and putting them, if you take all those gaps and add them up, it could be the size of a basketball. Imagine a hole like that in your house is losing a whole lot of heat and cool. So, let's see. Switching to non-toxic products for cleaning and personal use, and conserving water. Maybe using a timer when you take showers, turning the water off between brushing your teeth and doing the dishes. Think about solar. In New York City, if 25% of all of their rooftops had solar, they could provide enough energy for the whole state. You could possibly get an energy audit. Sign up for an energy audit through your energy provider to seek out areas of your home that are leaking perfectly good heat and cool. And create community in the streets. Buy used before new, repair before replacing. So spend the extra money to purchase quality products and repair those items before replacing them to extend their life. And so that's it. We are demonstrating sustainability now, and we think you can do it too.
It's 8 o'clock. If you need to go, feel free to go, but Rae's going to hang around. I'm sure there's lots of questions. And before you go, don't remember, talk to Gino if you'd like a seedling. So let's ask questions.
Go ahead, Gino, before you get busy and go outside.
Yeah. What do y'all do with your human waste? Does it go in that little bioswale with the cattails or no?
Of course you can ask that question.
Well, I mean, big problem.
So we have a humanure system where we, as one of our covenants, we reclaim all organic waste. So we
Collect it and compost it.
Yeah. So we collect it in buckets and cover it in sawdust. We take it to a location where there's composting bins set up and place it in the appropriate composting bin where it then sets for at least 2 years. And then it is considered soil compost, and we only use it on the bottom of trees. Because we are a demonstration site where many, many visitors come through our location and we feed them, we only put it on trees. But other than that, if it was my own home and I was just feeding myself and it was just my own waste, I would use it anywhere.
Where do you get your water from?
Mostly it's rain catchment. So all of our roofs have some type of gutters and rain catchment barrels or cisterns underground, and then we use different types of filters to filter that water into household use and drinking water. But once in a while, at the end of a dry season, we might run out of rainwater. And for that, we do have one spigot of county water at the very front entrance of the community, and so we could run hoses from that to an empty cistern to get somebody through until the next rain. Yes, Yes, sir.
Do you have any rules as far as your buildings, especially this new codes, for wind resistance? You know, unfortunately here in Missouri, we get 150-mile plus winds.
We have a committee that's called Warren Sighting because rabbits live in warrens and we're dancing rabbits. So the Warren Sighting Committee has a little bit of guidelines that sort of encourage us as to how and where and what to build. And they're in the process of putting together some guidelines. I wouldn't call them rules. But just learning from other people's past experiences with a roof blowing off is enough learning that we'll just share those experiences with the next people. But the epitome of Dancing Rabbit is an experimentation for natural building. That's what drew myself and my partner to Dancing Rabbit. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Ray. Several questions. Are you under guidelines for government grants? And do you charge individuals for the 2-week stay, or do they just share their talents? And another question, in going back to the 30s with the newspapers between the walls and the farmers putting the manure on the crops, and we are all eating that now, have you basically found that people are more interested in the style of your living, or just the fact that they want to go back in time a bit?
Are people more interested in the style of living?
Yes, getting away from a lot of the asphalt and concrete, and you being from a professional background, you were looking for something. Were you looking for actual nutrition and freshness, or just getting away from the humdrum of no nature in some of your environment?
Yes, yes, and
All
yes.
of those?
I was Jill of all trades in California, from modeling and sewing couture one-of-a-kind handbags and valet parking cars to make extra cash, and working in hospitality, hotel management my whole life. I wanted to get away from like the high-rise buildings and West Hollywood and the sexism and the genderism and just tired of spending my whole paycheck at the grocery store to try and get a few things that were organic. And my itty-bitty little plot of garden had so many power lines up above my head that I could hear the buzzing and the animals digging in the dumpster so loud that I couldn't really grow any food there. So I left for all of those reasons and was looking for less pavement and more natural organic food, and I found it at Dancing Rabbit. And your first couple of questions.
Government grants, by chance, or?
We do apply for a few of them, but we could use more support there. And
How about visitors? Do they just share their abilities, or do you have a slight charge for the 2 weeks?
There is a charge for visitors, and it's very nominal. It's just enough to cover their food expenses while they're there, and maybe a few bucks here and there to pay a teacher for a certain type of class that they may be instructing on. And other than that, they are visiting and getting so much from it that they're happy to offer their work and services. Thank you. Yes, sir.
What was the biggest contrast for you between what you imagined this sort of community would be like and what it was like in practice when you're actually living in it?
The moment that I realized that community existed, I felt 100% like, absolutely, yeah, I'm supposed to live like that. And the first community I went to was just an intentional community, a group of people that lived together because they shared a Vedic sense of religion. And that was not eco at all, like just the way that they were throwing away food, not composting, using paper plates and whatnot, versus okay, so what I thought I was going to experience at Dancing Rabbit, I expected them to sort of like quiz me more for skills that I had that would be an attribute in their community. And that barely happened. And it turned out that a lot of the skills I had from being a corporate person were super needed and helpful. Like, I've been putting together slideshows and scripts and training other people to go out and do what I do for the nonprofit. And so I feel like all of the attributes that I already had were just as needed in this community as the small farming training that I thought that I was going to go and learn before I went there. And you had a question behind this?
I did. What made you decide to go from off-grid to on-grid?
That's a great question. So basically, the community was growing to a size that was so large, and their energy needs were demanding more battery backup to store the energy in, and the community didn't want to have that waste product. So to avoid the waste product of having yucky batteries to store our energy, we chose to connect to the grid. And in order to make us feel good about that choice, we made a covenant to go ahead and produce twice as much energy as we could ever consume. So we're actually feeding energy to the grid, even though we're connected to it, and we just sort of use it as our backup battery bank.
Do they buy it from you? Or
Yes.
Yes.
We're currently selling back about 4 times as much as we take off the grid.
Yes, sir.
A question about, you mentioned your first intentional community was a Verde community. Is that right? Just wondering about religious pluralism or places of worship, or just what kind of different religious expressions or celebrations happen there? Either common, just kind of human stuff, you know, without regard to gods, or kind of more traditional religions.
I love this question, thank you. So there's very little in regards to like the standard religion that you might experience here. There's very little of it at Dancing Rabbit. Not many people leave farm to attend church, but we do have a lot of the other kind of religion, the kind that is just spiritual and practice, and whether it be a fire ceremony for the full moon that just passed 2 days ago, which was a super fulfilling experience. We had the visitor session there, and I arrived early and I got to watch the sun set and the moon rise and be just alone and on the land for 30 minutes before this fire ritual. We have a fire master and I don't know what you would call the other person that conducts the fire ceremony. But together they create a very spiritual, very amazing experience. And we commune with the fire and imagine that it is a portal that connects us to the thunder gods, you could call it. And so basically, like, as you're offering your prayers to the fire, you're communing with the other spirits that are there to experience that there with you. Other than that, we have a red tent, so a place where we have a men's group and a women's circle that can go and meet in that space and support each other. It's open to any gender, but as a female, you could go there and experience your menses and just be. Other Other than that,
You
we
said you
have
did-
a
oh, sorry.
5 rhythms dance, which is music that can be a wide variety of music, but basically it has to take you through a certain 5 rhythms that raises your vibration. And just the intention of putting together a piece of music like that and everybody coming to the space and having that intention of raising your vibration and experiencing it together. And some people might just be sitting in the back of the room and meditating, and other people are doing yoga and gymnastics on this side of the room, and then all here in the casa, the dance hall that we have, people are dancing in a very tribal way where it's not like you're looking at each other and engaging and dancing with a partner or another person beside you. It's very internal experience, and so we have lots of those things.
So it sounds like you don't have, you said you didn't have many people that left to attend church or whatever. Do you have any? Or are there any, say, traditional religious practice, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists?
Sure. Rachel is, her family is Jewish and she goes home for Passover. She's gone right now. We have visitors that come and do feel that need to experience church, and so they would go off farm and find church somewhere and carpool together.
On the other side of the coin, do you pay federal taxes or income taxes?
Sure, we all file our taxes based on how much money we make. So we pay our state and federal taxes. But on top of that, we pay our dues to Dancing Rabbit. So our dues would be the lease fees for the land that we build our home on, plus it would be 2% of your income, or a minimum of $15 per quarter. So it's very nominal, very small amount of money, but it is something that goes into the nonprofit's budget, and then as a community, we get to make choices on how we want that money to be spent. So then we build roads with it. It's very empowering. Yes, sir.
You talked about having computers and the internet and things. Is that in the community houses or is that in your own house, or how does that work?
That is across the board. Some individual homes do have their own like DSL wired connection, and then maybe they have a friend or two that use a like a router amplifier to share that connection. But the people that might live a little further and don't have their own internet would just take their computers to the common house, and there's a computer room, and you can be a part of the, so it's called the Digital Coyote is the name of the co-op for sharing the internet, and then the Howling Coyote is the name of the co-op for sharing a telephone. And so it's a very nominal fee of the internet, I think, is like $2.20 a month to be part of the internet co-op.
And then for growing your food, do you have community gardens and individual gardens, or how much of the food does each household raise itself?
That answer is, again, all across the board. It's very diverse and different with everyone. So my food co-op has a priority of local and like within the bioregion. So we buy most of our produce from local farmers in our community and within our neighboring communities. And then there's this company called United Natural Foods, Inc. And we all, I have the hiccups, I'm sorry. So we all order bulk food together from United Natural Foods, and it gets delivered to the grocery store 3 miles away. And our truck arrives on site before the truck comes to deliver stuff, and we take our portion of it, and it never even goes into the grocery store, because we have a Mennonite grocery store, and they don't buy anything organic. So, but they're willing to have the same truck do the same delivery, and as long as it, doesn't have to be stored in their facility and we pick it up right off the back of the truck, then we all get to order bulk goods together. So whether it be grains, oils, nuts and seeds, peanut butters. So we order stuff like that together, and it comes once a month. And then there's other people that do have large gardens in front and around their homes, or our village is like densely populated, and then there's ag land around the outside perimeter of it. So some people have a garden out in the ag land that's larger, and a smaller one, like for just herbs right outside of their kitchen or whatnot. But then I'm sure there's some people who feel like they just go into town often enough that they can buy from the grocery store and bring home stuff, and all of the above. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious about meat production or raising animals. I imagine you have covenants around that. Is there like a maximum that, people decided, we only want this much of that going on, or, how much, what kind of rules are there around animal production and slaughter and
The only rule that I can think of that pertains to that is around the OCIA organic standards for gardening or agriculture or whatnot. So as long as, like, say, the feed that we're feeding them or growing for them is organic, then great. So people are welcome to do as they please. We range from vegan to omnivore. Some people have goats, sheep, chickens, Muscovy ducks, and the like. And plenty of people are there to be natural builders, and they're not there to be farmers. So there's plenty of people that are interested in buying those products, and so some people raise animals for a living. At the Sunday farmers market, we buy eggs from our neighbors that keep chickens and ducks. This week I just switched from chicken eggs to duck eggs. Duck eggs, chicken eggs, like twice as big. Yes, sir.
Could someone live there into their 60s and beyond retirement, and if so, how would they provide for their income?
I think that there's many options. There's many builders that are interested in building multifamily dwellings, a place where you wouldn't have to live alone and do all of the chores yourself. If you have 4 rooms in a house and you co-house with people, then like you do some of the chores and they do some of the chores, and whatever we feel we're able and competent at doing. But I would imagine that childcare and teaching would be a couple of attributes that we're in need of. But I would imagine that there would be plenty of ways in which you can make a living also. Because first of all, making a living doesn't have to be very much money. You can survive on very little money here, so your retirement money is going to go so much further. And then maybe you would supplement that by being a bread baker, or a seamstress, or just all of the many talents and skills that you bring. You'll find your own ways to make a living there. Yes, ma'am.
Rae, the amount of cars is certainly interesting. Could you elaborate on how additional cars come into play? For instance, if someone has a friend in the neighboring community, do they drive over, pick someone up, and they go somewhere for the day? Or if someone's leaving for several months, do they have someone drive them to like an airport or some other forms of transportation? How do those other forms play?
Okay. So the covenant only says that you may not own a personal vehicle. And so that does mean that you could rent a car, you could have your friend come and pick you up. And we often drive each other to the train station and travel by train. By the way, airplanes are 10 times more polluting than train per mile. Side note. Did that answer your question?
Do they take the train to California?
I do.
Oh my gosh, wonderful.
It takes like 3 days. But I read more than I've ever read before in my life. Hold on just a moment. Ma'am, did you have a question also?
As far as people earning their living by, I don't know what you call it, water or whatever, you were saying that, well, does someone like that have to pay taxes if they're not earning dollars outside of the community? And how do they contribute? Do they barter for their $15 per year annual fee, you know?
They wouldn't barter to pay their dues. That needs to be paid in elms, which your work on farm could get paid in elms. And it's just the honor system. It's up to you to be self-reporting to the government to tell them how much you earn. Did that answer that?
Well, I guess, is there some formal way that the government asks you to translate elms into dollars, or?
1 elm is equal to $1. So if I want elms in my bank account and I have US dollars, I can use my PayPal account and send my US dollars from PayPal to the elms system. And it will digitally put that money in my account, and then I can spend it on farm and pay my dues. Yes, sir.
Are motorcycles allowed, small ones or scooters?
So a regular motorcycle would still be considered a personal vehicle, but we're in the process of building policy, blah, 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 that talks about maybe scooters or electric personal powered devices thing. So, so yes, I think it would be allowed. But we're trying to create a co-op so that we can share it. So it takes a little bit of meetings and policy building to be able to create a co-op and allow us to share those types of, like, if you want something there, it's instant manifestation. You just talk about it 2 or 3 times and somebody else is gonna be like, I want that here too. And before you know it, we're halfway through policy, and then next week it's like, yay, we have another car co-op, or, I mean, you could have a whole nother car co-op if you,
I just have a question about kind of personal vision or your personal thoughts on this type of community in an urban space. For instance, North St. Louis has lots of urban vacant blocks. The city used to be 800,000 and is now 300,000. And there's lots of connectivities to transportation where cars wouldn't be needed, lots of open space, lots of connections to trains, ideas, communication networks. So anyway, that's one kind of question that kind of relates to this idea of religious diversity and ethnic diversity. Mm-hmm. So if you want to address any of that, or how, you know, my observation is that eco-villages, when I look in books, they're all white faces. So I'm interested in that as an educational connection that's not just giving, but it's also receptive and so forth. Pick any of that.
I also desire to see more diversity in the people that live at this eco-village and at every eco-village. And I have strong desire to see eco-villages be urban. It's important for communal living to happen everywhere. We just happen to be located in this little corner where we can experiment and nobody's going to bother us. But it's very, very important that we spread communal living and sharing and sustainable choices and governance, and taking that political power back into each individual by having a voice, by living in community, by making decisions together. Yes, sir.
Talking about diversity, is there, not necessarily this your village, but any of the eco-villages that you're familiar with, do they have any accommodations for disabled people, the elderly, people who don't have mobility?
Sure. So on ic.org, intentionalcommunities.org, there's a page that's called directory. And you can search the directory for different types of eco-villages. So you could look for one that was a Catholic worker group, or you could look for one that was directed towards like an elder community. And so yes, you could look for communities that might be therapeutic for physical disabilities or mental disabilities.
Learning disabilities?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For learning disabilities, it is Camp Hill is just one option of a type of community where people come together and raise their children that have learning disabilities together. And there's also volunteers and just this whole team to offer support.
Are there any eco-villages near an urban area, or is it desired to live near an urban?
In the middle of Los Angeles, California, where it's super busy and super urban, there's an eco-village, and that's sort of like a co-housing scene where they have gardens and a big house where they live together, and they sort of own a block, a whole block of homes. So there's a huge diversity in types of eco-villages that are out there.
Lastly, what green method of transportation did you use to get here tonight?
Carpooling. Yes, sir.
Let's say you built your own house, but then you wanted to move, would you sell that to someone, or?
Absolutely. That's the only reason I was willing to build a house, because I'd only been in this community for like 3 months, and my partner and I were like, hey, let's build a house. I was like, but I just met you, and I just met this community. So he was able to encourage me with like, it's okay, we don't have to live here forever. Like, we're here to experiment with natural building. So I can definitely sell this home and choose another community, or choose a group of people to go and homestead with and build a new community together. I'm here in this community to learn skills, to take those skills with me and populate the world with more eco-villages. And then selling your home is going to be a little tricky, because it's hard not to undervalue yourself. It's hard to say, well, the US dollars I put into this building were only 17,000. And if you calculated like the amount of hours and labor that all of us, myself and the first team and the other couple of work exchangers that I had on, and if you calculated all the hours we put into it, and still still on top of that, it's gonna be way less expensive than any other house you would find on any other market in any other town. So, you know, how much do you price your home for when you built it with your own means? Yes, ma'am.
I don't want to assume that it's an idyllic paradise there. How have you handled, have issues like crime been handled, or if someone ends up having mental issues, personality disorders?
So in my year of being there, I experienced a time when somebody had like unstable mental state and made people feel frightened, and that person left, but we still got together and had what's called a restorative circle. So we got to support each other in hearing the experience that happened to them and how they felt unsafe. And then we have really skilled people that live with us. And these people have skills in like facilitation, and they're able to support us in and then, so as that, I'm going to ask for help from the back if you want to start thinking about how to answer this.
The conflict resolution team.
But I want to add one more thing first, and it's like, so as we were having this disagreement, we started to talk about, well, maybe we need to have like a team that's conflict resolution, that's going to go and be the police and handle a situation. And what I got out of that was like the notion that people's personal responsibility. I am far more likely to partake in the situation and help resolve it and help all of us be the police if there's not a police force on farm. If there's a if there's a conflict resolution team on farm and they are like the police, I'm gonna feel like I'm not gonna deal with that. Like, go tell conflict resolution. So that's pretty important to me, is that all of us are the policing officers and we support each other and we don't let people offend our people, our family. Can one of you add on to that any?
As a member formerly of the conflict resolution team, I was at Dancing Rabbit for a year, 2011 and 12, and we only had one conflict. It was two teenagers that were messily breaking up. And we helped them and helped the parents.
Just kind of the nature of all interactions there is extremely nonviolent. You don't draw on people that are, looking for trouble, really. So there's issues that are going to come up, mental instabilities and things like that. And it's the biggest thing is just the communication. I feel like pretty much everybody there, just the nature of living in community with people makes you such a good communicator that you pretty much are going to know if somebody has an issue with you, or if you're going to feel okay with letting somebody know if you have an issue with them. So everything's kind of brought out, and you can deal with it that way. And if something can't, then we have a conflict resolution team. It's basically like a mediation type of a
There's a whole list of trained mediators.
Sure, yeah.
And then another
mediation
example.
happens, and what's the other one?
Restorative
Arbitration, different things like that can happen in extreme situations. So, I mean, it sounds like if you're comparing it to dealing with, issues outside of community, it sounds pretty tame, but there's, oh my gosh, you were arbitration? But yeah, it's just by the nature of the whole environment and the people that are brought into it. We don't have to deal with typically the most things.
I have another example of a couple that went through a divorce and came out of it with the opinion that if they hadn't gone through their divorce in community, they would not be friends right now. And right now, they're able to be friends and co-parent.
If anyone else has questions for Rae, please come up. But it's probably time to draw the evening to a close. Last call for seedlings with Gino. So let's thank Rae for an excellent talk. Thank you all for coming.
So you're all welcome to visit us. We have visitor sessions 5 times a year.